Today on Good Morning Alderaan.
As always, Pat and Andy are starting off with last week's corrections.
We're never wrong. Except sometimes.
Guess who won't be arriving on set for Season 1 of Andor?
Season 1? A clue in itself.
Obi-Wan Kenobi takes leave of absence from Tatooine.
Off to face Lord Vader for the rematch of the century. Wait, who's watching Luke?
Pedro Pascal hints at what can be expected from Season 3 of The Mandalorian.
If we expect the unexpected, how unexpected could the unexpected be?
And the guys try their hand at their first interview with that Yoda guy, Nick Maley.
Do or do not. There is no try. Will they cover it all? Can they avoid errors while not losing their lightsabers during their first interview?
All this and more on Good Morning Alderaan.
Hello there.
He's no good to me dead.
We're fine. We're all fine here now. How are you?
I think you'll fill in nicely.
This is where the fun begins.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for news, reviews, and interviews. That one. From your favorite galaxy far, far away. My name is Pat. Don't call me Padawan Collins. And here is my co-host, the mayor of Alderaan himself.
Also known as Andy Hanlon.
Well, Andy, we made it again, despite, a little bit of mental instability, let's call it, from last week, where...
No technical errors, though. No technical errors.
No technical errors.
That we know of.
I didn't notice any, or if I did, I was still in too much shock and trauma from what happened earlier. And by earlier, I mean like an hour and a half before recording, to really, really understand what was going on there. So
what happened?
Well, I'm glad you asked. So, what may have been the first sign is when I just completely went off the rails and answered a completely different question than what you asked. What happened was we were talking about our feelings of the sequels. Sorry, the prequels. Yep. I kept getting those mixed up as well.
Prequels.
Where we were, of course, jumping back and forth. My mind has been on Revenge of the Sith for the whole concept of talking about the prequels, because that's like the culminating moment that's the crescendo of the prequels itself. And we were talking about that a little bit, and then we bounced to episode 1, and then we were talking about Duel of the Fates, and then you asked what my opinion of the rest of the movie was, and I started talking about the sword fight at the end of Revenge of the Sith instead. So what happened was, in similar to, Luke's, a lot of the Skywalker family fashion, I nearly lost a limb about an hour and a half before that in slicing my index finger very deeply on a can of tuna.
Oh.
It was a brief debate. Should I go get stitches? Because it was deep. It bled a lot. It hurt a little bit. And I can't remember when I had a tetanus shot. But, as they say, the show must go on. So what did I do? I wrapped 3 pieces of paper towel around my finger. I came down here and I used my middle finger to click the mouse instead of my index. And we recorded a great podcast episode, except for the fact...
I thought it was really good, actually. I thought it was one of our best so far.
One of our top 3, for sure.
Yeah.
And
wasn't it our third?
I think it was, yes.
Yeah.
And
so it's definitely in our top 3.
But I felt like a Skywalker. I nearly lost a limb. Like, I get why Anakin turned to the dark side if you're losing a limb like that, because God, that sucked. This week has been awful.
The same. I lost my arm from the elbow down, but I almost lost my index finger. Makes total sense.
I had to shower with my finger in the air for like a week. And I don't shower very often. Anyways, We're not here to talk about...
Well, look at you, and you didn't go kill younglings.
No, I didn't
turn on your friends.
I didn't do that. So that's a win for the week. Go me.
And the truth is, when we were talking about it, I actually noticed that you were referencing the wrong thing. But if you listen back to the previous podcast, I'm just sort of like listening, and then I actually sort of redirect the conversation back to what I originally had talked about.
It was masterful. absolutely masterful.
I was actually really proud of myself, and I didn't embarrass you at all.
You should have. You have full license and credit to put me in my place when I'm completely going off the rails, talking about the wrong topic completely.
You gotta be selective when you throw someone under the bus, though. You can't just go around freely doing that stuff. You have to really pick your spot to make it count.
You're a good Jedi. You're a great Jedi.
Thank you.
But yes, my feelings on it. I thought it was great. I liked episode 1. Jar Jar aside, say what you want about Jar Jar. I didn't hate him. I didn't. I don't give a care. It's like he was this weird sidekick character. Chewbacca, objectively, is kind of a weird sidekick character. He's Bigfoot walking around Han Solo with like no explanation whatsoever. He's not like cracking fart jokes like Jar Jar was or what have you, but it
Be you.
be you, sir.
Yeah,
But but again, I was 12 or 13 years old, I think, when it came out, so it really wasn't that heretical to me. Is that the right word? Heretical, heresy. It wasn't that offensive to me seeing Jar Jar Binks. Pod Race, I thought was entertaining and fun. It lined up with the sweet Nintendo 64 video game that I was a big fan of, as well as it had the Duel of the Fates, which Filoni later eloquent. If you ever get a chance, YouTube Filoni's thoughts on the Duel of the Fates, and he completely changes what people's perspective could be about that, about why the Phantom Menace is an important film, because that is the Duel of the Fates. It was the fate of Anakin. It was one of two ways he could go, where if Qui-Gon won, then he could be raised. Anakin would have that father figure that he lacked in a lot of his life, that understanding that was outside of the dogmatic views of the Jedi. So he could have had that support that was there, as opposed to Obi-Wan, who was very much like straight cut, follow the masters. To an extent, for the most part. We saw in the Clone Wars, of course, there was a little bit of bending and twisting here and there, but for the most part, he was very stoic and very, this is the way, this is the way kind of thing that the Jedi have always done it. So, as opposed to the more free views of Qui-Gon. However, your boy Darth Maul gave him a poke and ended that possible storyline in a hurry. So, it ultimately is what led to Anakin's downfall, was the death of Qui-Gon Jinn. But anyways, that's my 2 cents, and you can thank the can of tuna for denying you of that insight last week.
Thank you, Pat.
Hey, no problem. So what else? Corrections from last week. Very quickly, I'll rapid fire through these. Shadows of the Empire, the novel, was authored by Steve Perry, not Timothy Zahn, who I said. Timothy Zahn did like the original Thrawn, I almost want to say Thrawn trilogy, but it wasn't really. It was the Heir to the Empire. Heir to the Empire? That's probably going to be a correction for next week too. But Heir to the Empire novels featuring Grand Admiral Thrawn, as well as some others throughout the time. But it was Shadows of the Empire was Steve Perry, not Timothy Zahn. Sorry, Steve. Prince Shizor does not live in canon, as I thought he did. I think I mentioned it, saying, "Oh, Prince Shizor was in the last season of the Clone Wars." Turns out that Falleen-looking guy, the green-skinned fella, who I was referring to when Maul had a teleconference, a Zoom 3D hologram Zoom session with 3 of his bosses, including the guy from Solo. What was his name? He's played by Vision.
Oh, Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, he was there, as well as this guy who I thought was Shizor. That guy's name is Zilton Maj. Thank you, Nerdist.com. So the hologram to Maul's left is Zilton Maj, a member of the lizard-like Falleen species. Maj is the head of Black Sun criminal organization. Based on Mustafar, the Black Sun eventually joined with Maul's Shadow Collective in a coup. Maj murdered the original leader and took over. In the earlier canon novel Dark Disciple, Maj will propose a merger with Pike Syndicate that will ultimately result in a war between the two factions. Bad luck there. End quote. So, who I thought was Prince Shizor, the big baddie of Shadows of the Empire, turns out to be another thing entirely. So that's all the corrections that I had.
And just a quick update, Paul Bettany's character, Vision, his name was Dryden Voss.
Dryden Voss. I knew it was like, I want to say Quinlan Voss, but that's another guy in Dark Disciple. That's it's Dryden Voss. Okay, cool. So very quickly, because we really want to get to this interview. It's some exciting stuff. But news from the Star Wars world this week: omissions from Andor. So the Andor is about to start filming. If it hasn't already, it's already got a set design or set like erected in England, and I guess a lot of the neighbors there are not too happy about it. But Alan Tudyk was talking to Collider magazine, Collider website, about K2SO, K2, as he's known in Rogue One. So what he said was that he's not in season 1. This is what he said: "They're shooting it right now. I'm not in it. But if it stays in the air, stories keep getting told, I'll end up in there. I'm going to be in the show. It's just that the story that Tony Gilroy is telling doesn't involve K2SO until later on. I can't be too specific, but I can definitely say I'm not going to be in the first season." He went on to also say that I do know this: I have to be on stilts for it because the character is 7'1", and I'm not one of those guys to say somebody else do the motion capture and I'll do the voice later. I'll have to do the motion capture, and I turn 50 in March, so I hope I get to do it soon because I'm not going to be on stilts in like 5 years. I'm not doing it. End quote. So he's not in K2SO is not in season 1 of Andor is basically the crux of that.
The thing is, though, my theory on that though is that Alan Tudyk's not going to voice the character. He won't be on set. But it does not mean that there won't be someone, because essentially it's an Imperial droid.
Correct.
That
mass produced Imperial droid.
like K2SO becomes, like, they reprogram him, I think was what we learn in Rogue One.
Correct.
To some very minor degree. So I'm pretty sure that what's probably going to happen is you're going to see maybe at the end of the series them capture the droid or take the droid in, and then I'm like rewriting the program, which then sets up for Alan Tudyk to appear in season 2. I think so. I think season 1 is going to be setting up, like, I think a whole bunch of stuff's going to happen in season 1, but like I think at the end of it, it's going to set up that droid coming into like reality, if that makes sense. I
hope so. Yeah, that would be a great cliffhanger. That would be like, I know him right at the very end of Andor. I want to see season 2 now because I want to see how, I want to see Alan Tudyk. I want to see this droid come back to life. So I agree with you there.
Totally. In other news, we talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi series that's going to be coming to Disney Plus, and something I had found, some stuff floating around the internet. I don't know how true it is, but it makes a lot of sense. There's some articles out there around Obi-Wan Kenobi when they tease the rematch of the century with Darth Vader. Likely that would involve Obi-Wan leaving Tatooine to have that battle for whatever reason. So everything I've kind of been reading, it's very, very plausible, makes a lot of sense, is that he needs to leave Tatooine. So there's obviously some type of information that he gets. There's some sort of feeling. There's maybe some Force moment with Anakin that perhaps, I know we talked about last week, that we might hope to see, that may lead him to believe that he needs to leave Tatooine. Because in all of the original movies and then the prequels, we assume at the end of the prequels and leading into the original trilogy that Obi-Wan never leaves Tatooine after taking Anakin to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. We think that he's just living there in isolation.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see in the Obi-Wan series is a lot of his character evolve, maybe even fall in love. But I think part of that, also when it comes to the Vader stuff, I think we're going to see him leave Tatooine for a legit reason. And I think what would be cool to talk about there is maybe in a future podcast is taking a look at, do they kind of recreate some of the scenes of him needing a smuggler or some sort of pilot to fly him off of Tatooine? to get him where he needs to go, right? That'd be kind of
Ooh.
cool.
Yeah.
And maybe you see some overlap with a young Solo somewhere. Obviously, he doesn't meet Han Solo, but it'd be kind of cool if Han Solo's kind of walking through the cantina as
Yeah.
he's trying to get off. Because I also think it'd be really cool to mix the Obi-Wan series perhaps with some of the Solo stuff.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is I think
yeah.
we're going to see some Solo action in the Lando series that I've not really heard much about at all. I don't know if Mr. Glover's coming back or what have you. There's not really been too much information on that, but I'm thinking Solo might be reserved for that. However, yeah, some kind of crossover or like those fun little Easter eggs that the Filoni Favreau team are so good at throwing in. Like maybe this is my Shadows of the Empire, where he gets Dash Rendar to take him off and take him somewhere else. But that's all speculation. It's all just gossip for now. So don't take that to heart, people. But yeah, perhaps from the Clone Wars, Duchess Satine. Obi-Wan's love interest, maybe she'll come back. Maybe we'll see some. Although she did die, I think. But people always come back to life in Star Wars.
Right, yeah. Like, how cool would it be to see? I mean, I'm really hoping Liam Neeson's in it, but in some sort of force vision, force ghost. But how also cool would it be if somehow Rosario Dawson makes her way into it? Because if you watch the cartoon Clone Wars series, Obi-Wan obviously knows who Ahsoka is, and there's some overlap between the two characters, and it might be kind of interesting to see Ahsoka somehow connect with Obi-Wan, and maybe that's how Obi-Wan discovers that Anakin is sort of still alive.
Maybe.
Obviously he's hearing that Lord Vader, he probably has heard that Darth Vader is, leading the Empire and all of that, but I just thought it'd be cool.
I think it would, if they were to include Ahsoka, which I hope they do. I think that would be awesome. But it would be a very depressing interaction between them, because Obi-Wan, of course, later on with training of Luke on Dagobah, goes, "That boy was our last hope," and so if he did have hope that Ahsoka would be able to rise up, he wouldn't have said that. So otherwise, he could have said, "We got Ahsoka. We could just give her a shout." But
right, but Ahsoka essentially like leaves the Jedi Order, right? Like, she's
done with it, right? She's still got a lightsabers, but as aside from like the creed of the Jedi, she's done with it.
Right. So yeah, interesting. Anyway, I think there's more to talk about there. I just thought I'd bring it up because I'm I'm going to keep plugging in this podcast. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. I can't wait. This is going to be my most anticipated show, as much as I love Mando and Filoni and Favreau and everything that's coming. Obi-Wan Kenobi is what I'm waiting for. That is
You hear it here first,
show.
Folks. We have a new segment for the show. It's Andy's segment. I'm giving it to him right now. It's called Obi-Watch Kenobi.
Oh, damn right. I'm all over it.
We're gonna get some updates as to where and when things are happening with Obi-Wan. Andrew, that's your job now. So
beautiful.
There you go. Last bit of news here. So Pedro Pascal was talking with IndieWire this past week, talking about maybe what he can delve into right now as far as Mandalorian season 3. And here's what he had to say. He said, I am told what's happening and what the plan is, but I can't share it. They are in the expansion of this world, where there are so many unexpected surprises and timelines that are going to be dealt with. If the character were to cross over into these worlds, it would be utilized in a way that isn't meant to be expected. I wouldn't want to spoil the surprise of whether or not characters from the show we already know are crossing over. End quote. So we're getting flashbacks. Apparently, we're getting different timelines. So they may time jump, go back and forth, and explore some maybe Mando history, or maybe a few years have passed in between. When he last leaves Grogu, we just don't know. There's so much unanswered in that, and so much speculation that could come of it. It's I don't want to get too dangerous into not dangerous, but I don't want to overly theorize and just gossip monger or anything. But although I do like doing that.
My middle name is Danger.
Danger Jedi. It's 2 middle names.
Yeah. Just Danger. It's like Cher.
There we go. Yeah, just one name. It's my first and middle name. But So that's what we've got as far as news this week. There was also a Skywalker family book that was just announced on StarWars.com. You can find that article there. That's going to be, I think, pretty interesting as well, because that's going to be like a hard copy black and white catalog of everything that happened from Shmi Skywalker, what information is known about her, all the way through to Rey Skywalker, which includes, Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren. So they're gonna have some like a hard copy of that stuff. So if they do get into any kind of flirtatious time shifting or time changing, then tread lightly, tread lightly. But I doubt that'll happen anyways.
Yep.
But anyways, thanks again for checking out this first part of the podcast. We have now our interview with Nick Maley. Very excited to get him on the horn. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. Seems like he's gonna be a really great guy to talk to.
Yes. So here is the interview with Nick. We hope you enjoy, and depending on how time goes, I may edit it down. I know Nick is one to not hold too much back when it comes to information and storytelling. So it may be a two-parter interview process, but I'll hopefully post the full thing if we do need to edit it down as a separate episode, like a episode 4.5 or something. But look for that on YouTube as well as your podcatcher, and enjoy. We'll see you at the end of the episode. Now, today, we are extremely blessed to be joined by someone who is at the very start of it all. He has worked on a total of 53 films, including Superman, Highlander, and Krull, but perhaps most notably for the sets of A New Hope and especially Empire Strikes Back, where he and his team created the aesthetic of dozens of alien creatures, and I'd say especially everyone's favorite Green Jedi Master. You may have heard of him, Yoda. He currently operates That Yoda Guy movie exhibit in conjunction with his amazing Follow Your Star Foundation on the beautiful Dutch side of the island of St. Martin of the Caribbean. Well, please help me welcome That Yoda Guy, Nick Maley. Nick, how are you today?
I'm cool. It's like 8:45 in the evening now, so it's how am I tonight, really, I think. But no, I'm fine. I'm fine. It's always a little strange since the island is now sort of devoid of 90% of the tourists that we normally get. So my days are kind of caught up with making things and trying to sort through things. So it's kind of different from when I saw you last.
Certainly. That's the world as we know is completely changed, and I'm trying to find some positivity in that. We were just saying before I hit record here how I was in the cruise industry, we'll say beforehand, and it really has forced me to kind of embrace the creative side. I've started a lot more voiceover work and podcast editing and podcast producing, so really embracing that creative side of things. So again, just trying to find the positive in all of this craziness, and hopefully we get back on track sooner than later, and we can send more people to the incredible exhibit that you have down there. Like, I walked through there, I think it was in 2016, I believe it was, and you were gracious enough to, again, just like chat with my brother-in-law and I, two guys just wandering off the street. We chatted with you for, I think, 20 minutes or so. We were just asking you these bizarre questions like, what was Harrison Ford like on set, or what was it like to actually Yoda created? Just, and you were just so gracious and welcoming and warm.
Yeah, I think we're the I may be wrong, but I think we're the only place in the world where someone can just wander in without paying entrance for a convention or something, and access a Star Wars alumni and ask questions about things and get answers. What I'm trying to do generally is inspire people to believe in themselves and follow their dreams and be all they can be, and so that takes a degree of conversation to to do that. I try to help people understand that they don't have to do what everybody else is doing. They don't have to live a life that's exactly the same. If, in fact, if I had lived a life like that, no one won't be coming to see me, right?
Mhm.
So, that's the basic nature of it.
Yeah, I know for me, Nick, like my day job is in a helping profession, and one of the biggest things we look at when we help people change their life is deciding who they want to be and actually being true to themselves. So to hear you speak about that and just the gift of giving people Star Wars is one of those things that Pat and I talked. We've known each other for 20 years now, and it's the thing we bonded over in high school. It really brought us together as friends, and to be able to offer something like you offer for people, like you said, to wander in and be able to connect and talk and ask questions. It's an amazing thing. Really grateful for that.
Well, yeah, and Nick, you just humanized the process for us. Like it was like people think of Hollywood and they think of these large scale movies, and it's almost like this. It's placed on like this deity esque kind of plateau that you think is just like completely impossible. Like, where do you even begin? But again, as you said, you just allow people to wander in off the street and have access to, you know, your vast wealth of knowledge and history, and your experience, as well as the
A
artifacts that you
large
have as well.
a large part of this is just believing that it's possible. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things in my little book of big ideas, I say you can't achieve what you don't believe. If you don't believe it, then you don't invest any time in it. And if you don't invest any time in it, it doesn't happen. And I talked over the years. I've talked to lots and lots of people that have come in here, and I'm sure that it goes over the heads of 90% of them. And there are some that wander out and think, "Who is this crazy guy?" Right? But I've had two people who came in who wanted to work in movies, and both worked on Rogue One.
Get out.
Wow.
So, and those
Wow.
were just people that wandered in and wanted to do it, but were just receiving a lot of negativity from other people that thought it was, an impossible dream. And another quote from my book, I say, if you don't invest in your impossible dream, you're the one who guarantees it won't come true.
Wow.
Amen, Reverend.
So
Amen.
true.
Oh,
So,
it's so true though, right?
yeah.
Like if you just sit back and wait for it to happen, it's not going to get there. So, I had a childhood dream of being a animation cartoon actor, and so it took me until I think I was 31, 32, I think it was, before I finally said, well, first step is to, well, do your homework and then just get a microphone and just start talking. Just start somewhere. Put one foot after the other, and um, it sounds like that's exactly the message that you're pushing, and what a lot of people need to hear.
Yeah, it's really, first of all, you have to decide where. You can't necessarily decide precisely what you want to do, because most people, people when they start out, one of the big problems I think facing everybody in life is when they reach that point in their teens when people start pushing them to make a decision about how they're going to spend the rest of their lives when they have absolutely zero experience to base their decision on. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so they're gonna just kind of pick something that seems like a good idea, but through that journey of heading in that direction, I mean, how many people go to college and take a course that then when they leave college they completely abandon and they go do something else, right?
Pat.
I mean, that happens all the time. And what I try to say to people is, have a rough idea of where you want to go, build on what you've got that no one else has got, because that makes you the red tree in the forest, and you've got to stand
Mm.
out. It's no good being another green tree. And as you head in that direction, um, just be open to networking, and like a sailboat might go towards the wind, but it can't go head into the wind. It tacks this way, it tacks that way. Eventually, you'll get where you're trying to go. Just make the most of each opportunity, but do it in a practical way. And the most practical thing that you have to understand is it's going to be hard.
Right.
If you turn around and think, oh, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree, I'm going to come out, I'm going to be a famous movie director, and this is going to happen and that's going to happen. As soon as, the plan starts to fall apart, you feel the world's ended and you've given up. If you understand from the very beginning that it's going to be hard and things are going to go wrong, and things are not going to work out the way that you thought they would, but you have basic principles of trying to get 1 centimeter closer to where you want to go every single day, not next week, not next month, but today. What are you going to do today that is going to get you 1 centimeter closer to where you want to go? So one little tiny thing, one tiny step at a time, moving you towards where you want to go. Eventually, you've got to get there. It might take 20 years, but
Yeah,
you've got to get there.
It's like, and I only know this because it was Martin Luther King Day in the States the other day. We're Canadian ourselves, so we see it through all the social media and everything. But what did Martin Luther King say? He said, if you can't fly, then jump. If you can't jump, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. Just no matter what, keep going forward.
Like you're talking about opportunity, Nick, and what I'm kind of curious into is the opportunity. So we'd be regretful if we didn't talk about Yoda. And your experience working on Yoda and the opportunity to work on Yoda, how that came to be. And frankly, like, where'd the inspiration come for the character Yoda? Like, where was the inspiration to design that character?
Okay,
Where'd that come from?
first and foremost, when you gave me such a wonderful, glowing introduction, you kind of made it sound like it was me and my team. It wasn't actually the case. I was part of Stu's team, so I was one of the guys. But
Right.
let me just put that in proper context. When we started on the first Star Wars movie, I was the new kid in the creature workshop. And so no one trusted me to give me a solid character that was mine. I worked on bits of characters. So I made the eyes for a lot of the characters that are in the Mos Eisley Cantina. These Stu had this concept of just putting like dark eyes over in shells in things that so it was dark inside and you couldn't see the eyes of the people inside, and so you'll see they don't have moving eyes, they've just got kind of like bead eyes. And it was snowing outside. We had this cold snap, and this we were using compressed air and an oven, and they had made a kind of little space for it, maybe because they thought, being a compressed tank, it wasn't safe inside. They had to put it outside, so they'd converted a space that I think originally probably held 3 dustbins. And
Wow.
and so no one else wanted to work outside, so Nick can go do that. Let's send him out.
Send the new guy.
So
send the rookie.
that's how. So it's not really like I was so brilliant that they decided I had to make all the eyes. It's just no one else wanted to go out there. So
You're doing the little jobs until you get the big job, right?
You do the little jobs until
That's
you
right.
get the big jobs. Yes, and tested me. They tested me on sculpting by giving me hands to sculpt because they were very short on hands. Graham was knocking out a lot of these characters like Snaggletooth and others. He was sculpting those in a day or a day and a half at the most. And so I was sitting there. They had this fly character called Spizzit or something of that nature.
Right. Yeah.
And although it didn't have that name at the time, they all had what I'd call nursery names. when we were working with them. And so I was sculpting sucker hands for the Fly character, which ultimately got used for Pondo and all sorts of other characters in the
cool.
thing. So I was doing that. Graham was needed to be sculpting, and he had been doing the foam latex. So I worked with him to help him with the foam latex. And by the time we were halfway through that production, I took over all the foam latex work to free him up to do sculpting. So I was making skins for Chewbacca and some of those other characters. Making warts for Greedo and the tasseled mohawk that went over his head. But I was the new kid on the block. I was a lowly junior, if you like. When we left that, we did a job for Gene Roddenberry, a really bad pilot for a series that never took off. And then we went on to Superman and Superman 2. And so it was like 3 years later when we came back to Empire Strikes Back. And by that time, I'd been working with Stu a lot of the time. And so when we got the new team together for Empire Strikes Back, instead of being, the new kid on the block, I was actually one of the 3 most experienced people on the team. Okay?
For sure.
So it's important to understand that as I progress with this. So instead of having this tiny little room that we had to build the creatures for the Mos Eisley Cantina, they'd made all this money and they gave us this big workshop. Really, it was a complex. We had a separate room for the foam work. That was my domain. I was the guy making the foam skins for the Ugnaughts, and I knew I was going to make the skins for Yoda, and I prepared all the molds for Yoda, and Stu and I poured Yoda's head. I poured Yoda's ears and his hands and his feet because they weren't considered to be as important. I mean, it spent 5 months deciding what Yoda was going to look like. This was something of a nightmare. We had 10 months. We had 10 months to prepare instead of 5 weeks to prepare for the Mos Eisley Cantina. We had 10 months to prepare and film. So we had to, I think it was considered 3 months of that was going to be filming. So we had 7 months to prepare. And they spent 5 months deciding what Yoda was going to look like. And so suddenly, we were thrown into this sense of turmoil of now rush, make the molds, do the stuff, make the skins, get the stuff out. Stu had his own little room instead of us all being in this one, tiny room. And he was working on Yoda, and Yoda was his baby. And Graham and I were building the Wampa. And there was also the head of the Tauntaun, animatronic head of the Tauntaun, that was in the main workshop, and we were doing life cast for Han Solo in carbonite and other stuff.
Oh, cool.
And as soon as we started filming, Graham went down on set as the chief makeup artist. So Stu is the designer, he's in his room, Graham is down on the soundstage. I'm the most experienced guy left in the workshop.
You're the head honcho all of a sudden.
Right? Suddenly, I'm not the new guy. We've got all these new guys come in, and they're all looking to me for me to tell them what they should be doing and how they should be doing it. Okay, so as they progressed, and it had been deciding that Yoda was going to be a glove puppet, and they started to talk to the Muppets about operating them and stuff like that. They suddenly got kind of insecure about the fact that they were never going to see Yoda's legs. Because if you think of the Muppets, you always see them from, either the hips up or at best, a long dress and the knees up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't see Yoda's feet, the feet working. And so they asked Stu if he could build a walking Yoda for a long shot. It's not really important, just for a long shot, so we can see him walking through the trees. Well, Stu was desperately trying to make a mechanism in the last 2 months for the world's first animatronic superstar. No one had ever made a major feature as a puppet in a full movie, in a big movie, right? No one had ever done that. And so he had a lot of pressure on him. So he was in his room, working on that all the time. And he said, no, we don't have the staff. And we don't have the time to do it. You'll have to do something else. So who did they come to? They came to the guy who was running the workshop for him. Oh, yeah, that's me. Okay, right. So
out of the frying pan into the fire.
Out of the frying pan into the fire. And so they said, can you figure out some way that you could make, an animatronic walking Yoda? So I said,
not
something
yet.
Something else that is in my book. Something else that is in my book is sorry, I've lost track of what I was saying. Yeah, can you make a walking Yoda? Don't ever turn down an opportunity. When an opportunity comes, you can honestly say, oh God, if I try to do this and I fail, people will laugh at me. If I just play safe, I'll get through the job and they'll employ me on another job. If I try to do something outside the box and I fail, I'm going to be the guy who failed. And so fear is self-doubt is the worst enemy that you have.
100%.
People are scared of standing out in a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say, if you don't believe in yourself, who the hell else is going to believe in you, right? So I said, excuse me, let me just ask you this. Why are we talking about animatronic walking Yodas? Because if Yoda is in the scene on his own and nobody knows how tall the trees are, he could be any height.
Right. It's all about perspective.
So why don't we do a false perspective, make a oversized Yoda, put it on one of the little people, and guess what? His legs work. And we don't have to make mechanical anything. So that was the first one that I did. And they must have thought I was all right because they got their shot. It's the shot of Yoda walking through the trees, waving at Luke to follow him.
Right.
And
Wow.
and so they thought I was okay. So then they decided that they needed a animatronic, a radio-controlled Yoda to go into Luke's backpack. Because,
yes,
believe it or not, you can't get 4 puppeteers in a backpack. Their legs stick out,
It'd be
right?
tight.
Yeah, it just doesn't kind of work.
Just a little.
So, guess who they came to? They came to me and said, what about radio-controlled Yoda? Well, I hadn't done any radio control. Actually, at that point in time, I hadn't built any mechanisms either, right? I just worked around. I say keep it simple. Try to find something that if you looked at it from a new perspective, you wouldn't recognize it, and people would think you invented something new. So just try to just to look. If you're stumped, just sit down, stay calm, think about it. So I said, well, look, I really don't have the experience to do the radio control, but I could do the assembly. So we've got these guys in the special effects department who are making little robots that are running around on the floor. Get them, we give them the shell, get them to get a bit of head movement and a bit of jaw movement, maybe arms that come up that can be positioned, and maybe some finger movement. And I will put the skins on it and make sure that it's artworked and it's done.
It looks real.
So
Yeah,
that
it's
was
got
the
aesthetic
second.
of it.
Yeah, that was the second one that I got into. So by that time, Stu is still working on what we now call prototype Yoda. But I've already got the other two finished, and they're done. So the production was thinking I was an okay guy, you know.
Getting those stuff.
So finally, we come down to filming Yoda, and they're filming in Yoda's hut. And Stu was trying to make a really complex, super lightweight mechanism that could be taken out of the skull, so that if there were any problems, it could just go in, take the skin off, unscrew it, pull it out, fix the problem, put it back in again, keep going. But one of the complex issues, first and foremost, eyes looking left and right and up and down are a hell of a lot harder than eyes that look left and right. Eyes left and right is just like putting a pin through eyeballs and swiveling them one way or the other. Any third grader could probably figure that out. Trying to get eyeballs that look up and down, suddenly that eyeball's got to pivot from the center of the eyeball.
Wow.
And you're putting eyelids over it that are in a space that on the outside of between Yoda's eye and his skin, the corner of his eye and his skin, it's like a quarter of an inch. And you're trying to put the eyeball in and the mechanism in. And then on top of that, Frank wanted his hand to pass through the middle of the mechanism so that he could get his middle finger to Yoda's eyebrows. So the mechanism had to have a big hole in the middle to do it. So Stu has made this mechanism that was shaped like the top of Yoda's head, and the mechanism kind of went in a curved shape. I'm waving my arms around, and people listening on radio kind of understand what I'm doing. But it would go up into the dome of his head and then come back down to the eyes, so it left the area clear. And he was working himself to death to try and get it ready on time. Yoda went down on the set, and periodically he would lock up. They're also trying to get used to the puppet, and so we have Mark talking about how he had to try and keep a straight face when Yoda would be doing some insane thing, because they hadn't got the controls right, or because the mechanism was breaking down.
Well, certainly.
And so every time the mechanism seized up, and the puppet went out for 2 hours, for Stu to take the skin off, take the mechanism out, unlock it, put it all back together again, put it back on again, they were losing a lot of money. And so they came to that little guy in the workshop.
That Yoda guy.
That Yoda guy in the workshop. And they said to me, look, do you think you could build a backup Yoda? Whatever you can make in 3 days. Because, even if it's just got working ears, if it's just the shape of Yoda and it's got working ears, then we could shoot on the back of it, and we can shoot on Mark. You look at the scene of Mark talking to Yoda. Yoda's not there most of the time,
Right.
You just got a single. It's normal if two people are having a conversation. You look over the person's shoulder, so you see the person he's talking to. Yoda's not there most of the time. There's a couple of shots where he is. It's because the puppet was up in the workshop being unlocked and brought down again. So they said, just get it to do whatever you can, but do it as quick as you can.
Yeah, I remember I watched that that interview you had through your StarNet. I'll plug the StarNet Facebook group.
Okay.
The Galaxy That Britain Built. That's what it was. It was your
Yes.
interview with David Whiteley. I wrote
That's
that name
right.
down on here. Absolutely brilliant, and it almost brought a tear to my eye when you were talking about how you created this other puppet and then
Yeah.
what it was doing. And when you saw that on set, like
I was determined that I was going to make the most of the opportunity. So something else that's in my book, if you think you can deliver 100%, then, promise them 60%, right?
Yep.
And shoot for 120%,
boom.
right? If you deliver anything that's more than 60%, they think you're great because you gave them more than you said you would.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what you're
Over-deliver.
shooting for. When you shoot for 120%, when you miss the 120%, there's every chance you'll hit 100%, right? You're just stretching yourself. So I decided I was going to try to make a puppet that would do everything that they wanted the puppet to do. And whatever failed, whatever didn't work, I'd pretend that I hadn't expected it to do that. Right?
Oh, a happy accident.
Yeah, right. So I got one of the trainees to stay with me, and we worked straight for 3 days and 3 nights. And we built the puppet that you see in 80% of Yoda's scenes. It wasn't a nice mechanism. It was the first mechanism I'd ever built. But I had spent time with Stu. I had looked at what he was doing, which was really complicated. I mean, it was almost mind-boggling about how is this thing going to work? What does that bit do?
Right.
Whereas I believe in, keep it simple, stupid. And so,
Yes.
my mechanism wasn't going to come out of the skull. I literally acryliced it. I said, oh, we'd take a bicycle cable from the bicycle shop down the road and we'd just acrylic that cable into the skull, right? That's in there. That's permanent.
Shoehorn
That
it
ain't
in.
going anywhere,
Yep.
right? But the point was that it never broke down. And so that was how that came about. And I in that video you're talking about, I got quite emotional because there is when you have spent 13 years striving to reach a certain point in your career, and you've faced all those periods of unemployment, you've faced all those challenges, those times when someone gave you a chance and you did your best, and maybe they didn't employ you for 16 weeks, maybe they only employed you for the 2 days, right? You went through that, and it wasn't just a couple of days. It was 13 years trying to reach that pinnacle. And when we're talking about the second Star Wars, we all knew this was the cream of the crop. This
It's
was the
something.
movie everyone was waiting for. Everybody was going to look at that. And I knew when I saw the first day's rushes, I knew that I was that I'd done something that people were not going to forget. And it was that turning point, that point in your life, and it was very emotional. I sat in the viewing theater with a tear or two running down my face because I knew that 60 hours that we put in 3 days, working all day and all night, sleeping for 2 hours at a time on the floor. I'd sleep on the floor while the trainee was soldering 2 bits together. And then he'd wake me up when he was finished, and he'd sleep on the floor while I fixed the next 2 bits together, and got to a point where I woke him up and said, do this, and I'd sleep on the floor. All of that suddenly came to fruition. So yes, of course, it was a very emotional moment. And talking to David, that was the first time that I'd ever really talked to anyone about it. And so I got kind of teary on camera, which I'm a bit embarrassed about, but it is what it is.
Don't you dare be.
Mm-hmm.
That brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah.
I gotta say, like you could feel the amount of effort and work and heart and soul and blood and sweat and tears that went into this process, and the way you described it as working 60 hours in 3 days, that's unfathomable. So to actually, like, for that intense, relatively in the grand scheme of things, short amount of time, I can all but guarantee it did not feel very short while you were living in that moment. But 3 days having accomplished something that here we are over 40 years later, still talking about, still gushing over, still, getting merchandise, getting children these days. Like my 3-year-old daughter knows on sight who Yoda is, and who
Sure.
like
Of
is
course.
it's this iconic piece of history that, as you
Right.
say,
Right.
people won't forget. So to get a little bit emotional about that, but I'm getting emotional on your behalf just talking about it. So
Okay, well, that's cool.
it's a beautiful thing you've created and gifted the world with, certainly.
Well, once again, I always say this was a team effort. I wasn't the only guy that was
Certainly,
there.
certainly.
Someone else that was really important was Wendy Midner. Wendy was the go-between between the Muppets and myself. And while Stu and I were working on, Yoda's head, she made the body and she sculpted the hands and she sculpted the feet. I phoned those, but she was putting all of that together. She was one of the puppeteers. She looked after it on the set. I say there's a whole group of Yoda guys.
Team effort.
I like
absolutely.
I like to say, you asked me where the inspiration for Yoda came from.
Yeah.
The answer to that was they paid me, but the truth
Green.
is that people think of Ralph McQuarrie's drawings when they think of how Yoda was designed. Yoda, all the early drawings were done by Joe Johnson, not by Ralph McQuarrie. Ralph McQuarrie did
interesting.
one series of drawings that were influential, and none of them looked like Yoda. Yoda started out as a Smurf, as a blue character
he
with
was
a
blue,
beard
yeah.
and a little pointy hat, and at one point he was a garden gnome in kinky boots. Thank God we didn't stop at that point. But, all of those were done, by the illustrators. So I like to say that the illustrators were the sperm donors, and Stuart was Yoda's dad, and Wendy and I delivered the baby. And we had help from the guys from the special effects department, from the trainee who helped me, another trainee who sculpted the lip extension and made the lip look much longer on film than it does on any of the Lucasfilm Yodas that you see in exhibit, because they're pulling him out of the mold, and we changed the way he looked after he came out of the mold. Various things. There's a team of people there who all contributed something. Deep Roy, who was that little person who got
no way.
inside the Yoda suit and was the
I
person
did not know that was him.
Yeah, it was. And so all of those people were influential in the making of Yoda. Just some of us were more key than some of the others.
It takes a village to raise a Yoda, so it's
yeah, right, exactly.
It truly was a team effort, and each of you deserve every bit of praise and every bit of glory. And here we are again, 40 years later, saying, "Well done, great job!" Like, you're still getting that. It's iconic. It truly is.
And I find it so fascinating, the difference, and obviously not just feeling it myself, but to hear you describe the difference going into A New Hope, and then the difference from being a part of A New Hope and then going into Empire Strikes Back. Like, just the difference in terms of what, in terms of what you were actually doing and where you had come from. It's just very fascinating.
The production was different too, because the first one, no one expected it to be anything exceptional. Right. And by the time we got to the second one, it broken all the box office records, and we knew that we were the guys that were suddenly all the cutting edge guys. We went from being a bunch of guys hoping that we'd get another job to being the it team that everybody wanted on their next movie.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's absolutely amazing. Yeah, Nick, we've taken up far too much of your time already. So, how about this? How about we end with a quick game, I'll call it, of this or that, where it's just some quick rapid fire questions and you say which one of them you'd prefer. Again, there's no right, no wrong answers. It's just purely this or that.
Okay.
Andrew, do you want to go back and forth, or should one of us just rapid fire it? What do you think?
Let's go back and forth
Okay,
because
I'll do the
I
first
really
one.
want to ask the last one
And
that we have
we
here.
can certainly.
So you start.
Okay, good. I'll start us off here. Luke or Leia? Which one do you think is more powerful in the Force?
I think Luke.
Han or Chewie?
Are we still talking about who's the most powerful?
No, this is just like personal preference, love of
Oh,
character.
okay.
Preference.
Yeah. All right. Chewie.
Who do you like? Chewie.
Boba Fett or Vader? They're tough. They're tough.
Yeah, I'd have to say Vader.
A New Hope or Empire? Empire Strikes Back.
Empire.
Me too.
A New Hope or Return of the Jedi?
A New Hope.
Millennium Falcon or the Slave One?
Oh, Millennium Falcon.
Easy. Okay, The Mandalorian or animated Clone Wars or animated Star Wars shows?
The Mandalorian.
You want to do the next one again, Pat?
Sure. Star Wars books or TV shows?
TV shows.
And this is the last one.
Oh,
And
yes. Andy wanted this
I
one.
have to ask it because I've been wanting to ask you this ever since Pat mentioned that we were going to get the opportunity to talk to you. Live action or CGI version of Yoda?
Well, that's kind of a stupid question, really, isn't it?
It's an obvious question.
Yes, it's an obvious question. Of
leading
course,
question.
it's got to be live action.
Live action. So it brings me just really to a really quick talking point. If you can just comment ever so quickly, because it is a stupid, obvious question in the sense of obviously your contribution to the live action Yoda. What are your thoughts on the CGI Yoda? Because in episode 1 and episode 2, they went a different direction. Or no, episode 2 and episode 3, sorry. Episode 1, they still
Yeah.
had the puppet. But
I lobbied them. I say I lobbied them. I wrote to them. Whether they have actually read what I wrote or they didn't, I don't know. But I lobbied them to keep Yoda as a puppet in episode 1 because I was afraid that they'd make him digital. And they did. And when I saw it, I was kind of embarrassed that I had encouraged them in that direction because I thought that the digital version that they did for episode 2 was much closer than the Yoda that they built for episode 1. I think personally, I feel it's water under the bridge, but I also had written that I thought Nick Dubman was a good person to head creature effects for episode 1 because apart from anything else, he had the continuity. He was one of the trainees that was in our department for Empire Strikes Back. And so he knew how Stewart had built the prototype Yoda because he worked with him very directly on Empire Strikes Back and really more or less kind of filled in my space on Return of the Jedi when I went on and did other movies. So he just seemed like the right person. He knew exactly how Yoda had been built. So I really couldn't believe that they made Yoda out of a different material, which was going to be heavier, which made him a lot less maneuverable. They built mechanisms that were much more radio controlled, which meant that you didn't get the organic feeling that you got in some of the others, and they made him out of a transparent material instead of an opaque material, and they resculpted him rather than pulling a plug out of the mold and using the original sculpt. I mean, I couldn't imagine that they could have made any more mistakes than that.
Yeah, because when I recall seeing episode 1, I found the eyes of the Yoda in episode 1 to be very different than I recalled him in the original trilogy.
I'll tell you what was said to me about it because I talked to them about it afterwards, and they said, "Oh, but Yoda has a different, emotional feed, through this one. He's feeling more angry, and he doesn't want to." He didn't say at the time he doesn't want Luke, doesn't want Anakin to become a Jedi. He doesn't think he's right, and so we wanted to sculpt him with this different attitude. Well, when you sculpt a puppet isn't necessarily like a character. You have to sculpt that puppet in a central position that's going to allow you
Neutral.
to make him look happy or sad or whatever else along the way. I mean, if he's a character who's supposed to be miserable all the time, then you give him a neutral, miserable look, but still leave the opportunity for him to smile and look like a sad person smiling. But you don't just completely resculpt the character from scratch. And the sculptor who did it is a very, very talented sculptor and does, really, really good work on a lot of different things. I don't really know how we got to that on that particular movie. But that doesn't mean that because the animation on episode 2 was better than the live action on episode 1, that was the right way to go. It just didn't build the puppet right in the first place, right?
Yep.
And I presume you're aware that I've been rebuilding Yoda for the last few years.
It's beautiful.
And that is built exactly the same way as the backup Yoda was that I put together. And what you've seen actually so far isn't the finished Yoda. We have not quite the eyes that I have in that Yoda are a little different to Yoda's eyes. Because I need something more durable and less breakable for me to drag from conventions and through airports and various other things. And the mechanism on it has been designed for one puppeteer instead of 4 puppeteers. So it's slightly different. I call it my light version of Yoda.
Diet Yoda.
The one that is coming now has the eyes painted by the same artist that painted the original eyes in '79, and a costume that has been archivally matched to the original costume. So, and that one will be in the museum here, rather than being dragged from place to place.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I mean, it's I did that because I started it just because I felt that we needed to show how that technology was done for that point in time. And I to be quite honest, there haven't been many characters since that have captured people's hearts in quite the same way that Yoda did for
absolutely
for the
correct.
world's first animatronic puppet.
Certainly, outside of the the ensemble of like the Muppets or Sesame Street, where it takes like literally an ensemble of all of these sculpted puppet animatronic characters together, as opposed to like a standalone. I think you're absolutely correct.
But also the Muppets weren't really animatronic in that sense. They weren't glove puppets.
No,
they weren't socks. But they, they had moving mouths and eyes that might roll around just because gravity took the eyeball one way or the other way. They didn't have the mechanism. It wasn't until Dark Crystal and Labyrinth that they got into that. And even then, I don't think they had the subtlety that Frank Oz brought to Yoda. Frank Oz is also, you cannot underestimate the impact of Frank Oz's performance and also of Kurt's courage to give Yoda time. I felt that was one of the things in episode 8. They rushed through Yoda. It was like they were afraid people would look at it for too long. And they shot through that scene. If we had shot through the scene of Yoda raising the X-Wing out of the swamp, people wouldn't have fallen in love with him the way that they did. If you hadn't had those moments, those moments where he sat there and went, that is why you fail. It's like, if they'd said that is why you fail and moved on, cut, you're gone, it just wouldn't have had the same impact. We
Yeah,
really
totally
got to
agree.
know him as a personality, and Frank Oz performed a puppet as if it was a person.
Uh-huh.
And it was so effective that the director would give instructions to the puppet instead of giving
Right,
instructions to the
Irving Kershner.
puppeteers.
Yep. Oh, I remember hearing those stories, like how he's talking
Mm,
directly to it and looking him in the eyes, and oh wait,
sure.
no, it takes a second because he's so believable in his performances that you just think it's another cast member. You expect to see them at
Yeah.
the at the lunch table with you afterwards, but there he's in his box.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nick, like we got to have you back, man. This has been absolutely phenomenal. And I may have to cut this
Okay.
into.
Well, we can talk about the rest of my career then, and then we'll talk about sailing around the Caribbean
Yeah.
and
Oh, that's what I'm
being
talking about. Yeah.
and making living a life as an artist, or as an author. Every
You have
time I get a little tired of what I'm doing, I reinvent myself and make something else. So, I always thought I'd like to be an artist. So I'm sitting in the Caribbean, I'll do that. It's all based on the same principles. If you believe in yourself and if you push yourself, you can, if you look confident and you can make people believe that you should be there and they should have faith in you to do something,
then do
they'll
it.
let you do it,
Yeah.
right? So
Love it.
you have to go for it.
Absolutely love it.
Thank you so much.
Nick,
If anybody wants to find me, they can find me
Yes.
on Facebook as Nick Maley, or they can, if they have any trouble with that, just look for Yoda Guy Movie Exhibit. That's on Facebook as well. We've got lots of websites. If you go to thatyodaguy.com, that's a hub, and it'll send you off in different directions depending upon whether you want to buy something or whether you just want stories about making movies or whatever it is that that you want. So
I think
the
it's
biography is at nickmaley.com. I mean, there's lots of options.
perfect.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's absolutely. And I'll give a shout out to Starnet as well. Your other I think it's every Sunday you run these
Pretty much every Sunday. What I do is I do a webcast. I do it through Facebook and YouTube as well. But anybody who subscribes to StarNet Events Group will, every Sunday they'll have the option to see something, and they're all about creativity. They're all about either people who made a career for themselves. They may be about distinguished people who made great, famous movies, or they might be about making armor for cosplay, or they might be about making props, or they might be about something else. We have a lot of range of different people, and I try to do them every Sunday, although I think this Sunday I might drop because the person I was expecting to get has just told me they can't do it, and we're going to have to put them off for 3 weeks or something. And then it's already Friday night, so
Yeah,
something else up is getting a bit close to it. But
For sure.
but generally speaking, and those sit around for quite a while. So anyone who joins StarNet Events Group now will be able to look back at a lot of the videos that we've done, during the course of this year. And we started to do it as a way of thanking the people who support us through this period where the museum has no income other than through those people on the internet that are helping us. So we have a Patreon page where people subscribe and pay, $5 or $10, or we do have some that pay $100, to support
Worth
us
it.
each month. And so we started to do StarNet just as a way of giving them something back for that support. But it's taken a life of its own. If anybody wants to do that, by the way, you go to patreon.com/FYSF, which is Follow Your Star Foundation. And you'll find us there.
Absolutely beautiful. Nick, thank you so much for your time tonight. I can't thank you enough. This is, as a lifelong Star Wars fan, someone who I can't remember a time in my life that I didn't know who Yoda was. I don't remember not knowing Star Wars, so it's an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And again, you're always welcome on the show. We'll be more than happy to help support you any way that we can. Everyone, please go check out Nick's book. Check out Starnet. Check out anything that's on the in that Yoda Guy hub. That Yoda Guy hub. It's nothing but wonderful content and so much entertainment, and it's the least we could do to give back to you as well as the other creators who have brought us so much joy over the years. So again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts so much.
Well, thank you. And if anybody does want that book, the easiest way to get it is through Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You can buy it online. I think I get about 13 cents every time they sell one. Don't expect to make a fortune as a writer, by the way. that doesn't really work out very well unless you sell millions of copies. But anyway, the point is that all these principles that I've been talking about are in that book. And because I didn't want to bore anybody, I made sure that there weren't any chapters that were longer than 1 page. And so, it's a very easy book to read. You read 1 page a day at breakfast in the morning, and it just helps keep you on track as you head on your route to find the destiny that you want. One of the things that's in there, it says, don't let the insecurities of who you are today spoil the possibilities of who you're destined to become.
Oh, we got to end on that note. That's beautiful.
Yes.
That's absolutely beautiful. Nick, again, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate your time. And we'll see you soon, I hope.
I'm sure you will. Okay.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Nick.
you.
Thank you.
I definitely was not expecting to get that much information out of that interview. I initially pitched Nick with a 15 to 25 minute just little snippet on, what it was like to design Yoda kind of thing, and to get all of that. That's about half of what we got. I included some of the Star Wars centric stuff, but just if you have an interest in the movie industry and the behind the scenes of the makeup side of things, which is it's crucial and vital to Hollywood and to big budget movies, is the makeup and the prosthetic of the prosthetic department and making these characters look like these movie characters, then we've got a treat for you, and I'll tell you about that maybe at the end of it. But what did you think of our chat with Nick there, Andy?
Oh, same. I mean, I couldn't believe how much content we got out of him. Like, he would have talked to us for hours.
Yeah. And you know what? We're definitely going to have him back. We have to. The guy's,
yeah.
He's such a wealth of fun stories and information, and he's hilarious in his delivery of a lot of it, too. So
very inspirational, as people will find out later on. But yeah, I mean, I just couldn't believe how much content we got out of him, and like how much Star Wars content we got out of him, but also about the other things that he talked about. I can't wait for people to be able to hear all of it.
Oh man, his upbringing and some of those stories, it was like Catch Me If You Can. I'd love to release it all at once, but on one hand, we were just like, we'll hold back for, drumroll, February 7th is International Star Wars Podcast Day, where all Star Wars podcasts have been invited to jump in on this Facebook group, and everyone is asked to contribute one special episode dedicated to Podcast Day, getting released on February 7th to celebrate the very first Star Wars podcast that was released. I think it was in the late 90s. I didn't even think podcasting was a thing back then, but apparently it was. And that commemorates the origin of Star Wars podcasting itself, as the first one was released on February 7th, 1990 something. And so what Andy and I have ultimately decided was to release our full, unedited, mostly, edit out our little washroom breaks or whatever, but full unedited interview with Nick Maley. It is absolutely incredible. As Andy was just saying, this you feel like you're gonna. I think I literally said at the end of our recording, I literally feel like I can run through a wall right now just because of how much inspiration he gave, and like it's like anyone can do this. Anyone can do it. He's like, if I can do it, you can do it.
If you're a Star Wars fan and you like listening to podcasts, this will be like the nice little midwinter letdown from Christmas, see through the end of winter type of treat that you need, especially like, this time of year. The weather's not as great depending on where you live. The sun doesn't stay out as long. It's a little bit more dull. This will be a nice little sunshine in your day if you need it.
Well,
They'll pick me up.
Exactly, and it's a long one. It's gonna be a doozy. It's like a full-length feature film. I think around to give you an idea, probably an hour and 45 minutes or so. So it's a doozy. But as I said, it's just so interesting. We were hooked the entire time, and so motivational as well. So I can't stress how excited I am enough to share this with everyone. And again, please go check out all of Nick's channels. We'll post a bunch of links on our social media. You can look up StarNet on Facebook, where every Sunday, we're recording this on a Sunday afternoon. I just had it on a little while ago where he was talking about zombie makeup prosthetic with an industry pal of his. Every Sunday he just has little chats, and you can visit his Patreon page as well to help support, because his business is a lot in tourism, where he operates that Yoda Guy movie exhibit that relies heavily on the cruise industry, visiting the island of St. Martin and the town of Phillipsburg there. And it's, with COVID and all that fun stuff, there's not much traffic going in these days, about a tenth, I think he said, of the traffic he usually gets. So supporting him any way that we can would be greatly appreciated for sure. Please as well go check out Nick's book. I don't think we mentioned it in the actual interview itself. It is entitled The Do or Do Not Outlook: 77 Steps to Living an Extraordinary Life. But yeah, it's available on Amazon. It's available on his website. So go check that out and get inspired to do take this path that Nick took.
Yeah, so we want to thank you again, as always, for hanging out with us, for listening to us try our hand at speaking with Nick, and we had a blast doing it. If you would be ever so kind, please punch that subscribe button, give us a rating. And again, stay tuned for future release with the full interview with Nick.
And yeah, greatly appreciate it as well if you could, share us with a Star Wars friend of yours. Say, hey, have you heard of that new podcast with those hip new hipsters of Pat and Andy? It's probably not a great ad for us, but just say, hey, it's your cool Star Wars podcast, and you can maybe share our social media with them on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. I believe they're all at Good Morning Alderaan. And if you have any questions or concerns or edits or corrections, you can send those to either our DMs in any of those social media platforms or to our email, gmalderaan@gmail.com. Well, Andy, are you ready for that fun fact?
Yes.
Okay, so speaking of Yoda, did you know that Yoda was almost played by a monkey? A real live monkey. They initially tried to, thank you to the HuffingtonPost.ca for this this little fun fact. They initially hired a monkey and screen tested it to, a monkey would wear a mask, and they would train it to do certain things to teach Luke how to be a Jedi.
We should have asked Nick about this one.
Oh shoot, yeah. Next interview, we'll earmark this one and ask him about it. So they initially tried to have the monkey wear a mask and parade around the set. They couldn't keep the mask on the monkey, I guess. Rightfully so. I think animal activists would probably, raise some alarm bells and say, why are you forcing a monkey to wear this weird looking mask? And I'm looking at a picture at it right now, and my God, it would have been not the Yoda that we came to know and love. So thank you, Nick, for doing it right and trusting it to Frank Oz as opposed to a simian monkey. I think that's calling it like a monkey because I think simian means monkey. But anyways, that's our fun fact for the week.
Very good.
On behalf of my co-host, I just want to say thanks for listening. And hey, always be a Jedi in the streets
And a Sith in the sheets.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.